for another rendition of the Pound for Pound. I'm your host, J.R. Clark, and today we're going to be talking about the upcoming free agency. We got the Super Bowls behind us, the Senior Bowl, and the East-West Shrine Games behind us. We got the Scouting Combine coming up in a week or two. So, today I think we're going to focus on our free agents, the guys who are currently on our team that are fixing to hit the free agent market, and discuss whether we should bring them back or not, whether we should re-sign them or not. So without further ado, let's just jump on in. First name on that list is Dontari Poe. That's going to be the highly talked about until free agency hits, right? He's going to be the one that they're going to discuss, or the fans are going to discuss and pundits are going to discuss. Should we bring this guy back? Did he do enough to earn a contract, a big contract, or whatever money he's seeking? This past year we paid him $8 million with some incentive packages and stuff like that. That got him close to $10 million. Do I think Dontari Poe's worth $10 million a year? No. I don't think Dontari Poe's worth $10 million a year. Did he make our defensive line better? Yes. He did a very good job for us. Was a very solid piece in the middle next to Grady Jarrett. He got himself 2.5 sacks throughout the season. Number of tackles for losses and stuff like that. I mean, he did what you brought him in here to do. The question that the front office is going to have to answer: what is that worth? What kind of contract is that worth? And that's the question he's going to have to answer. What is he willing to take? Did he really enjoy his time being here? I mean, he's on record saying that this is one of the best times he's had in his career. So, money isn't always necessarily the number one thing. I mean, it is to most people, but other people, happiness can be a driving factor. If he really enjoyed playing for DQ and really enjoyed being coached by Marquand Manuel and those guys, he may just choose to stay as long as the price is right. I think if you can get him for $6 to $7 million a year, I personally think that that's worth it. But you also got to keep in mind, in the coming years, starting next year, you've got Grady Jarrett who's up for a contract. You've got Vic Beasley who's up for a contract. Not too long after that, you got Deion Jones and Devondre Campbell who's up. Same thing with Keanu Neal. So we have to weigh what he wants versus what we're going to end up having to pay them if we want to keep them. This is the juggling act of the NFL, right? I mean, everybody knows that. That's what makes, unfortunately, what New England has done even more impressive. In the years of the free agency, the era of the free agency, building a dynasty is extremely hard. So these tough questions have to be asked. If you ask me, should we bring back Dontari Poe? I don't think we should. Not that I'd have anything against him. Not that I think he didn't play well. I thought he played very well. I just think with the contracts we have coming up and the talent that is in this draft, there are a handful of defensive tackles that can be gotten in the first, second, and third round in this draft that I believe can do what Dontari Poe has done for you. So that brings us to our next big name free agent, and that's Adrian Clayborn. All right, now Adrian Clayborn had 9.5 sacks this year. I believe he led the league, or led our team in sacks this year. That is, that's worth looking into. That's worth deciding if you want to bring this guy back or not. But on the flip side of that, keep in mind that 6 of those sacks came in one game against Dallas. So you take that one game out, he had 3.5 sacks. So again, depending on what he's asking for. If he's asking for, top tier pass rusher money, you got to let him walk. If he realizes that the bulk of his production came from one game, then maybe you can get him for a decent deal and he can still be part of that rotation. I mean, because he's probably one of our more consistent pass rushers / edge setters. So I don't say just write him off. That's something you're going to hear me say a lot, depending on what the money is, right? That's the one thing I can't predict. But if you can sign him to a contract you feel comfortable with, then I say bring him back, because you always can use that veteran, leadership on that defensive line. But I honestly believe that Takk McKinley had a real good showing in his rookie year, and I think that he could step into that role that Claiborne, played for us. And you could potentially either draft or sign another rotational pass rusher kind of guy, right? So I'm not saying that Adrian Claiborne is a must re-sign, but if you can re-sign him for a decent price, I definitely say that you do, because you don't want to gut too much of the veteran leadership. All right, so speaking of leadership, that flows in right into our next guy, Ricardo Allen. Now you're listening to sit there and tell me, JR, Ricardo Allen's not a free agent. He's a restricted free agent, okay? So that means the team is going to tender him, and then another team could potentially offer him money and end up having to give us draft picks in the process. But we could also just sign him, to a long-term deal. And I think that's definitely something worth exploring. I mean, is he Earl Thomas? No, but there aren't many who are Earl Thomas. There aren't many who are, Harrison Smith. You see what I'm saying? What we do have is a very competent, very solid free safety back there. I mean, even Marquand Manuel said that he's an eraser. I mean, if things get past everybody else, he's probably our best tackler on the team. Most sound tackler. So, I see a lot of people who just kind of want to write Rico off. I'm not one of those people. I think he has done exceptionally well for where he got drafted. The fact that the Mike Smith era cut him and Dan Quinn brought it, changed his position, saw that innate talent, that drive, and that intelligence and that communication skills. You got to think he's in his third season? He just finished his third season as starting free safety. I'm definitely thinking that, he's worth keeping around for sure. And he's worth giving starter money. He's a very intelligent football player who has very good technique. He may not have the freakish athleticism that some of these other guys have, but he's definitely worth keeping around. And I definitely think that that's a guy that they should re-sign. All right, so that's it as far as like your bigger names, like your quote-unquote starters. Let's talk about some of the depth guys, some of the rotational guys. You got Courtney Upshaw, who's a free agent. You got Taya Rubin, who's a free agent. Both of those guys fill a need on this team as a rotational player. I mean, our run defense got much better once we signed a Tyrus Rubin this past year. Because he was able to come in and spell, either Dontari Poe or Grady Jarrett, and you didn't lose any of that production. As far as run stopping. I mean, that's what he is. He is a run stopper. He might luck into a sack every now and again, but run stopping is where he has made his bread and butter. So as long as his contract isn't crazy, which it probably isn't going to be, because he's in his early 30s, so he's not a spring chicken by NFL standards. So with that being said, we should be able to re-sign him, and I think that's somebody that we should definitely re-sign. Now, Courtney Upshaw, on the other hand, you kind of got three guys who do the same thing. You got Jack Crawford, who's going to be coming back off of injury. You got Derek Shelby, and you got Courtney Upshaw, who play that defensive end, defensive tackle type role. Who are more run stoppers and edge setters. So, I mean, if Upshaw wants to come back for, 1 or 2 year deal for, $2-3 million a year, I say bring him back. If he wants much more than that, I say let him walk. Because you have those guys already. I already said you should bring back a Taya Rubin. Then you got Leroy Reynolds. As long as Leroy Reynolds is happy with his role, as a backup linebacker and a special teams demon, bring him back. Pay him $3-4 million a year, bring him back. Then you got the question marks, I guess you could say, of Kamal Ishmael. Did Ishmael enjoy his time as a safety slash linebacker, or would he rather be just a full-time safety and fight for a starting job somewhere? Because if that's the case, then he's probably not going to want to come back. But if he was happy with the role that he had, special teams, backup linebacker, backup strong safety, then, again, as long as the contract's good, bring him back. You got not Nate Stupar, I'm thinking of Nick Williams. Nick Williams on the offensive side. I don't know. He's not really shown me much. He's shown to be a competent receiver, but for whatever reason, he doesn't get on the field. I don't know if it's because this past year, you had he was just buried too far down. If that's the case, bring him back, because that leads me into my next point of Taylor Gabriel. I don't see any reason to bring Taylor Gabriel back. You bring him back if you feel like you can use him. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Gabriel is a great player if you scheme him open. Okay? That's with them natural rubs and stuff like that. If they can figure out how to do that this year, then bring Taylor Gabriel back. But Sarkisian didn't show me that he could figure that out in his first year. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a bash Sark session or praise Sark session. I'm just saying that he didn't show that he could scheme open Taylor Gabriel, and that's what Gabriel needs to make his athleticism and his speed shine. Because he doesn't have the size, he doesn't have the physical prowess, he does not necessarily the crispest route runner of the game. So if he can't get schemed open, then he's not much good to us. I think he would be a better fit with Shanahan out in San Francisco, where he's enjoyed the most, success in his career with Kyle Shanahan, whether it be Cleveland or Atlanta. So I think, he should take his talents to the West Coast. That's my opinion there. Like I said, Nick Williams, bring him back for special teams, bring him back for depth, if that's what you want to do. But I believe you could draft a guy, in the later rounds that may have more upside than Mr. Nick Williams. Andre Roberts did a fair job for us in the punt return duties. I don't know if it's enough to bring him back, because that's all he seemed to be really good for us, and that was punt return and kick returns. And I know we had decent special teams this past year, but I think you could draft a kid out of college or even an undrafted free agent to field punts and kicks and stuff like that. That's just my opinion. It's been stated more than once that what they're more concerned about is just secure catches and not fumbling. So if that's the case, put Justin Hardy back there, put Nick Williams back there. If you re-sign Taylor Gabriel, put him back there. I'm just not 100% sure that Andre Roberts is somebody that we necessarily need to bring back. I think that's really it as far as the guys that I could think of. I mean, I'm sure there are more depth pieces and lower pieces, guys that have never actually hit the field for us, that we need to decide whether we need to bring back or not. Then there's always the question of what do you do with Andy Levitri? Do you try to rework his contract? Now is about the time where Brooks Reed starts to cost you $5-something million a year. Do you bring him back? I mean, these are the interesting questions about the free agency. I think next week or so I'm going to try to put together a video showing you some guys who I think maybe we could bring in, guys who I would feel like could help our team, and then after that we'll get into the draft stuff. So let me know in the comments down below if you're liking this or not. I know we took a little bit of a break this time around, but me and Toby kind of needed to recharge ourselves, I guess you could say. But keep your eyes peeled. I'll be doing more free agent stuff and more draft stuff as the weeks go on. And then of course after we sign whoever we sign and we draft whoever we draft, I'll be taking a look at those players. So, you know, like I said, let me know down in the comments below if you like what we're doing, if you want us to keep doing it, if you're enjoying it, or if you want me to, you know, hang it up and turn my camera off. Let me know. Peace.